Hello, people. Sleepy Reader here. I'm grinding down through my Sleepy Vlog countdown. It's kind of ridiculous because I'm probably out of material, don't you think? But I set this up where I was counting down from the number 31 and I'm on number 6 now. So I feel like I've got to keep going. Which brings to mind the fact, sometimes we call ourselves comic book readers, comic book collectors. A little while ago I was talking to someone and it popped into my head the obvious thing. What I should call myself is, at least right now, is a comic book obsessive. I'm not so much of a collector. I mean, I enjoy collecting to a degree, but I enjoy obsessing over the comic books most of all. And I'm not that good of a collector anyway. So then, just this afternoon, I thought, well, there are triggers that trigger my obsessiveness, that send me back to it or have started it in the first place. Because I haven't always, I've on and off been obsessed by comic books. So you can say the obsession was always in the back of my head, but it's certainly not the only thing in life I've ever obsessed about. So I think that one of the big triggers over several times that has triggered my obsessiveness is finding a really brilliant comic book and then obsessively wanting to find more brilliant comic books. This happened when I discovered Daredevil by Frank Miller in my late teens, I guess. Or the beginning of college, I think, is when that started coming out for me. And then again with Alan Moore. And anytime, I became obsessive about Alan, or the obsessiveness got triggered or re-triggered very quickly after Frank Miller with Alan Moore work. It also got triggered not quite so long ago by Planetary by Warren Ellis and Cassaday, and I felt compelled to try to find more stuff. Another thing that triggers my compulsiveness is the wrong word, obsessiveness. Just to sidetrack, one reason where I realize I'm more obsessed by comics than by collecting is a little chat with somebody, or overhearing a chat, I can't remember, where they said, well, I have to buy that issue or it will break my run. And I'm just, do I care? Do I need the run broken? Or do I care if run is broken? I guess it's nice to have the whole run, but that's not like a core part of my thinking. It's more like tracking down all the issues that have Jim Steranko if I'm obsessed by Jim Steranko. So a lot of times a really intense, interesting artist will really trigger that obsession. I think in the early days for me, I would just catch little snatches of Neal Adams, and I was obsessed to find out more about Neal Adams and to find anything by him. Although I was also always upset because I guess by the time I started buying comics, Neal Adams mostly just appeared as a cover artist, and I would be upset there's the cover and the art inside in no way matches. But anyway, so Neal Adams is an example, Jim Steranko, as I mentioned. It helps the obsession, or especially started the obsession when I was a kid, that these were hard to get artists. I mean, I love John Buscema, but when I was buying a lot of comics as a kid and a young teenager, John Buscema's art was everywhere. So I didn't have as much of a John Buscema obsession as I did Jim Steranko or Neal Adams. And I guess it helped to be obsessed by Jack Kirby. I mean, he was great, but another thing that obsessed me about it was that I actually did have trouble finding. I sort of came in just as his best stuff at DC was ending, except for Commandy. So those back issues, those few back issues of New Gods and Mr. Miracle and Forever People and The Demon seemed like holy grails to me at the time. I'm trying to think of other thing. Another thing that helped sort of feed the obsession is information. The fact that Marvel Comics, when I started as a kid, had this page that was like this densely packed page of information about other Marvel Comics and the goings-on in the Marvel bullpen and everything. Like, I would pour through that as a kid. This was like the internet for me. Just pouring through that, pouring through little tidbits of information on the in the letters page. And the sense that I got from all of that, of this interconnected larger universe that I was only seeing a little bit of. That triggered the obsession. But then later, magazines like Comic Reader and Comics Journal and other more obscure fanzines that I used to find which would have interviews. You know, some little mimeograph fanzine way back in the day would have an interview with John Buscema or Roy Thomas or something like that. And that would feed the fire. And you know, with my Jack Kirby obsession, that fire is definitely fed by the discovery of the Jack Kirby Collector. So being able to read about comics, to have this obsession sort of both fed information-wise and also the sense that other people think it's important, although they're scattered about. And so then we come to the modern age with CBR and Bleeding Cool, and those kind of semi-feed the obsession, but they're too promotional. You know, even Bleeding Cool was just promoting itself, I guess. But there's not a sense of the depth of background of even the old Marvel bullpen bulletins and their checklist and everything. Doesn't have that excitement for me. But it does feed you a lot of information. And then there's podcasts, and then there's YouTube, and I think maybe I owe doing this particular vlog here, to Running with Comics, who's talking about how he wouldn't be nearly as obsessed with comics as he is, or with half as many comics as he is, if he hadn't had this great community that we've been sharing. There's so much information on a variety of levels about what comics are good, people's knowledge about comics, their experience at conventions, meeting artists, their thoughts, the connections we make, the interconnectedness of comics, that you can read one comic and connect it to the other, whether it's, you know, in the development of comics or the cool art or the actual stories that are connected to each other. That's all the addictiveness. So it seems like the YouTube thing has intensified the opportunity to be obsessive and intensified maybe the length of my obsession. Like, I think my obsession would go in waves, but this wave has been a very long one, and it hasn't started to go down yet. So yeah, I'm a lifelong comic book obsessive, and being on YouTube makes me admit that. Early on in doing these YouTube videos, I did a video about comic book addiction, and it was kind of a revelation to me at that point that yes, I am kind of a comic book addict, that I will be enjoying these for the rest of my life. Because probably all the other times when I was younger, I thought, well, now that my obsession has died down, that's it, I'm moving on. I probably won't read comic books again, but I always came back to them and came back to them and came back to them. So that's my thought about obsession. I'm actually gonna probably pursue this obsession idea a little more in a few other vlogs in different ways. Like, look at some particular comics that I was obsessed about, you know, back over the history of comics, and then maybe look at comics that have been currently obsessing me, new comics that trigger obsessions. Talk to you guys later. Bye bye.